Hey, everybody. If you're a reading teacher and you love reading aloud to your kids, you have to read this book, The Ramped Up Read Aloud by Maria Walther. She basically gives you over 100 different book titles that you can use in your classroom to teach different reading strategies and skills to your students. And it's amazing. I wish I would have had this book when I was in my own classroom, because there's so many books in here that I have not read that I would love to read to my students someday. So I'm going to jump right in. It's split up into 6 chapters. And chapter 1, it gives you book suggestions on how to create a joyful classroom community. One of the books that she highlights is called The Invisible Boy. And basically how it's set up is she has different strategies and skills that you can teach your students. And she also, for each strategy or skill, she will include a mini lesson plan. And so within that mini lesson plan, she includes a little summary of the book, what you can do before, during, and after reading. And this is not everything that's in the lesson plan. I just took one thing from each heading because I didn't have enough room to share everything. And then after your reading, she gives you an extension activity. So it could be a discussion or a writing prompt or a technology application, something that you can do to make this book more memorable and extend the experience beyond just the read aloud discussion. And then what I also love is she includes similar titles. So if you don't have The Invisible Boy available at your school, you could look for these other titles and teach the same skill with it. She also highlights rich vocabulary that you can teach to your students. And she also gives you learning objectives that you can post on your board or just verbalize to your students before you read the book. This book is awesome. I love it. Chapter 2 is all about your fiction elements. And so she chose this book, They All Saw a Cat, to teach understanding different perspectives. And basically the cat walks through the world and comes across different animals, and it shows the cat from the different animals' perspectives. So you can have some great discussion from the illustrations in this book. I love this book. I read this to my students last year too, and they loved it as well. Chapter 3 is still talking about fiction books, but it's more focused on the comprehension, since that is our end goal of reading, is to understand what we're reading. And so she wants your readers to imagine themselves in the book and to visualize what's going on in the book so that the students can understand what they're reading better. And so one of the books that she highlights to teach story retelling is Creepy Pair of Underwear by Erin Reynolds. If you've ever read Creepy Carrots, this is the same author. And so it's not just an interesting, funny story. It's also a story that you can use to retell from beginning, middle to end. And so I highly recommend this book, and Creepy Carrots is another title that you could use for this purpose. Chapter 4 focuses on informational and narrative nonfiction texts. So your autobiographies, your biographies, your informational, expository, all of those different texts. And this book that she highlights is called Shark Lady, The True Story of How Eugenie Clark Became the Ocean's Most Fearless Scientist. I also owned this book, and I read this book to my students. And you can use this book to connect character traits to the text. Students learn about character traits when we talk about fiction stories, so they can take what they've learned there and connect it to the informational and nonfiction text that we include. And this is an awesome book. Your girls are going to love it because they're going to see that girls can be scientists too, not just boys. So I highly recommend including this book in your read alouds. Chapter 5 focuses on vocabulary and language, which we all know is crucial in all instruction. And so It's broken up into different categories where you might want to focus on reading fluency, like this book. This book, One Day in the Eucalyptus Tree, has a bunch of repeated parts. And we all know that when students are exposed to repeated reading, that helps build their fluency and it helps them become more confident. There are also books in this chapter that will focus on expression or other parts of reading fluency, like not just repeated parts, but maybe just repeated words or repeated ideas, things like that. If you've ever read There Was an Old Lady Who Swallowed a Fly, you can do the same thing with that book, but I chose to focus on this one because it may not be as well known as this book, There Was an Old Lady Who Swallowed a Fly. So this is a great book to build fluency and build their language. Chapter 6 is my favorite. It's all about how the books that we read can inspire our students to become better writers. And one of the books that she highlights in this chapter is The Legend of Rock, Paper, Scissors. If you haven't read it, it's amazing. It's very engaging, and it focuses on the noticing characters with unique voices. So each character is written from a different voice. And so when you read this book, you want to read the different characters in different voices, and then you can have some great discussions about why an author would use different voices in their reading. And so this is an awesome book. I highly recommend it.